welcome. The show's in honor of, it's a show for veterans, about veterans, and by veterans. And we're really honored today. We have some very, very special guests who are actually returning to us after about a year. Commissioner Loree Sutton, thank you so much for coming back. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your being here to join us and talk about what's going on in the world of veterans. And we do appreciate it. And Matt Basile, the Staten Island Veterans Representative. And of course, Paul Dietrich, who's been pretty much the backbone of the operation. He keeps it going, he keeps the shows going, and he keeps pushing me to get more shows out on the air. So.
Thank you, Ed and Paul. It's a delight. Matt and I are just truly delighted to be here with you.
Yes.
What's going on in the world of veterans, Commissioner?
Well, I'll tell you, Ed, what a difference a year makes. Mm-hmm. When we were last here, it had just been a couple of months since the mayor had signed that legislation on the deck of the Intrepid establishing our new agency. And this last year, we have been working like fury. We had just hired Matt on when I came last year, and now we've gone from a year ago, June, we had about 4 people on board. Today, we have 32 people on board. And I'll tell you, what we're able to do now, I can hardly wait to describe to you, what does that mean? What does that mean for the average veteran or family member here on Staten Island? You want to know?
Yes. Sure.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. Well, first of all, we feel so blessed. I mean, we are standing up a startup in New York City government. How cool is that? And we're doing something that no other city has yet done in the country, to stand up a city agency that is designed to be by veterans, for veterans, with veterans, and to provide that hub that veterans and their families, when they come back from the service, or maybe they've been here like you and Paul and Matt and others who have been here for several years, but they know their city government is not going anywhere. And so this is an investment that, under the mayor's leadership, the speaker, Chair Ulrich, and the advocates around the city, including our great Staten Island veteran advocates. And I had a chance to just see a few of them coming in the studio this afternoon. In fact, I saw, Emily Cortez, who gave me the coin for her son, Private Isaac Cortez, one of our Gold Star family members. And I'm just reminded of the spirit of Staten Island and the reason that we're doing what we're doing. So here's what we're doing. First of all, we have, in moving from 4 people to 32 people, and by the end of June we'll be at 35, that's what we're budgeted for this year, we have stood up 3 lines of action. Now, those lines of action, housing and support services, and what we're calling CE5, that's City, Employment, Education, Entrepreneurship, Events, and Engagement. That's Matt's line of action, and we'll get to him in a minute and let you give you some more detail. And then our third line of action is whole health and community resilience. And we're working very closely with Shirlane McRae, New York City's First Lady, and her Thrive NYC program, and we'll get to that in a minute as well. But let me start out by just catching you up on where we are with ending veteran homelessness. To just give you a little bit of backdrop here, over the last 5 years, so this is work that's been going on before I got here on the scene, and it's work that so many in New York City and in cities across the nation have worked so hard over the last 5 years. As a nation, we have decreased veteran homelessness by 47%. Awesome. Is it enough? No. But have we stopped? Never. But here's the kicker. In New York City, where the vacancy rate for affordable housing is less than 1%, we have decreased veteran homelessness by 90%. Now, that's phenomenal. We were given a shout out by First Lady then Michelle Obama last fall when a number of the leading cities were called to Washington, D.C. to share our wisdom, but it hasn't come about by accident. And we've been fortunate to have great leadership within city government, as well as our private and not-for-profit partners, as well as our government partners at the state and the national level. So this is an ongoing campaign, but we have made light years of progress, and we're now really excited about being able to share the policies, the practices, the partnerships, the programs that we've stood up here in New York City that have made such an outsized difference. So that's ending veteran homelessness. Now, getting to Matt's line of action, this CE5, which, okay, I know you want me to say it again. City Employment, Education, Entrepreneurship, Engagement, and Events, right?
Right.
This is where we have stood up 5 satellite offices. In fact, this week, we just opened up number 5 of 5, but Matt here in Staten Island was the first satellite, the second satellite office. We started in Queens. Matt opened up shop here in Staten Island, and I want Matt to be able to just give you some information on just what that means and what he does on a day-to-day basis to make things better for Staten Island veterans and their loved ones. Matt?
I'd be happy to. So on a daily basis here on the island, I like to pull together all the resources that the city might have and engage the community in anything that they might need involving education, entrepreneurship, and so forth and so on. I'm stationed primarily at the Borough Hall up on the North Shore, and then also at the College of Staten Island. And I have open office hours for anybody that needs to come and engage and has any needs that need to be met. I'd be happy to do so.
Do you have phone contact and email contact? Because that's to be an important way for veterans that need any of these assistances to link to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. My cell is 646-799-2743, and my email is mbasile@veterans.nyc.gov.
And that would be M. Basile spelled?
Basile.
Great. And I know Paul will put you in contact with Alexis, our press secretary.
Yes.
Because we want to be able to provide the outreach specialist names and contact information for our other satellite offices as well.
Yes.
But we're very proud of what Matt's doing, and we know that it's just going to get better and better as we establish our citywide outreach and engagement and presence so that veterans don't have to go across the river to be able to connect with someone like Matt who can help them sort out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Bringing the resources here to the island is extremely important, I think, for the city. Something that needs to be done, and we're in the process of doing
it.
Yeah,
it's
it
tough
is.
getting to the city
Absolutely.
from Staten Island.
And there are issues that unless you're actually present on the ground, eating pizza with veterans and their family members, talking to leaders, listening to what's really going on, you're not going to hear what the real issues are. And I'll just point to one example. Matt used the GI Bill for his schooling and went to the College of Staten Island, and one of the first things that he brought to my attention was this disparity in the GI Bill housing allowance.
Yep.
That it nets out at about $1,000 a month less
Currently, yeah.
that veterans who use their GI Bill to attend school here in Staten Island, it puts them at a disadvantage compared to their other veteran peers in the other 4 boroughs.
Yes.
So that's, we've been able to make some progress on that front, and I know that you all have been involved in that effort, but that's just one example of the kind of advocacy that is now increasingly possible because we have folks like Matt here on the ground.
Very, very important. I'd say.
Absolutely.
And we have an overwhelming number of veterans that reside on Staten Island.
Yes. Greatest density per capita of the entire city. And I have to tell you, one of the real joys, I came over to Staten Island early in my tenure. I was appointed by Mayor de Blasio in the 1st of September of 2014. It wasn't long before Borough President Jimmy Otto invited me to come over, came over to Borough Hall. It turns out that there was a veteran art exhibit.
Yep.
And so he wanted me to come and meet the veteran leaders. It was at that meeting that I met so many of the Staten Island veteran advocates and leaders and, the Rolling Thunder chapters that were just here a few minutes ago. But I was also able to meet a very special individual that day in addition to the entire group, and that's Bobby Allis.
Yes.
Yes.
And I learned about the service, the sacrifice of Staff Sergeant Michael Allis. I learned about how this community has come together. I attended a few months later the dedication at the high school of the statue, the monument, and of course, I can't tell you that just how proud I was. Maybe another year or a year and a half later, it took a little time, but when the mayor announced that the first of the 3 new Staten Island ferries is going to be named after Staff Sergeant Michael Ollis. That's the spirit of Staten Island as I've come to experience it.
And that was a home run within the veterans community.
Oh, absolutely. And more recently, just last week, was another just milestone event when the district attorney and the borough president came together and had a special breakfast tribute for Vietnam veterans in Staten Island in commemoration of the rolling 50-year commemoration of the Vietnam War. That commemoration started in 2012, which of course is when the Vietnam buildup first started, and it will go through 25 years through 2025. And to see, well, there were over 200 Vietnam veterans who were there last week at this breakfast tribute. And to see them come up one by one and accept the coin that has been forged and created and dedicated to our Vietnam veterans in Staten Island. Many of them coming up with tears in their eyes, hearing the district attorney and Borough President Otto welcome them home. One of them said, "Mr. President, I'm going to put this in my pocket and I'm never going to take it out again." Just so touching and moving and so well deserved. So just another example of the spirit of Staten Island as I have been privileged to know it and to live it and to experience it at so many different times and places throughout the last, 31 months now? Hard to believe.
Just about.
The event you speak of, all reports, unfortunately I couldn't make that one, but for all the individuals I spoke who raved about the
phenomenal,
and the fact that the borough president and the district attorney, a Republican and a Democrat, hand in hand, came up and said, "Welcome home, guys."
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, that reminds me of another experience, another just example of this spirit, the spirit of Staten Island. A day after the election last November, there was a breakfast. It was a tribute at St. Adalbert's School.
Right.
And of course, this is the school whose children daily honor the memory, the service, the sacrifice of Father Capodanno.
Right.
And so here we came together. Most of us had been up much of the night. And we came together. It didn't matter in that moment and at that place and with those children and community members. It didn't matter who was Republican or Democrat, who was delighted at the results, who was upset by the results. Everyone was there, first and foremost, as New Yorkers, as Americans, as Staten Islanders, as members of a community whose efforts in that event, that occasion, were aimed at honoring the service and sacrifice of one of America's all-time great heroes, Father Capodanno, and applying those lessons and sharing them, celebrating them with the next generation. Truly, truly moving.
Right. They do a wonderful job at St. Adalbert's. It's got to be one of the greatest schools on Staten Island, and the principal, Diane Hester-Higgins.
Just phenomenal.
She's,
So I got to tell you, I'll rave on at Staten Island at a moment's notice anytime I get a chance, and so it's exciting then as we're standing up both the services that Matt's most directly involved in. We're taking on issues for advocacy. We're continuing our campaign to end veteran homelessness, and we're also, I want you to know about this, that we are getting ready to roll out this fall something that we're very excited about. It's called Vet Connect NYC. And this is a network of about 80 service providers who have been vetted for quality and whose services, there are no wrong doors. You can text, you can email, you can phone, you can walk in brick and mortar to any one of the service providers, but all roads lead to the secret sauce. And that's the coordination cell. Northwell Health has just gotten this contract, and so we'll be working with them to stand up this program and launch it this fall. Unite Us, which is a veteran-owned high-tech startup company, they're providing the advanced tech platform. And then Syracuse University, it's Institute for Veteran and Military Families. They've got the managerial oversight. And so this was a pilot that was started almost 3 years ago now. It proved its mettle here in New York. Other cities around the country knew that they didn't want to wait until the end of the pilot. They are starting to develop this model, but New York City, we're leading the way. The city bought the network. We're now preparing to relaunch it as a rebranded Vet Connect NYC. So I would love, Ed, for us to be able perhaps to come back later this fall, maybe bring members of our team to talk about it.
Well, let me say this, Commissioner. You're welcome to come back anytime.
I'll be here.
Okay.
I'll be
You
here.
don't need an appointment. Just come. We'll do a show anytime, because you're bringing valuable information to the public.
This is news that our veterans and their loved ones can use. And concurrent, I want to just add one other thing. With that launch, the rollout of Vet Connect NYC, we will also be launching what we're calling our Core 4 Whole Health Model. And C1 is culture, education, and the arts. We've just announced our Theater of War Public Artist in Residence program, Brian Dories. And by the way, our first performance in Staten Island will be coming up in the next few weeks. We'll give you that information as well. But over the next 2 years, there will be 65 performances throughout the 5 boroughs. And that's an important piece of wholeness and healing. C2 is connection, peer-to-peer connection. There's such a strong bond between veterans. So we're working with Teachers College at Columbia. They've got a very strong program there in peer mentoring, and we as a city, we're bringing together all of the various organizations that are involved in mentoring so that we can create an ecosystem that helps match veterans with the best mentoring available.
Can I bring up something on mentoring?
Of course.
We have been lobbying for quite a while. This is from the VFW side, and I'm the legislative chair for my district. We've been asking for assistance in getting more peer-to-peer counseling. And I think it's extremely important. Veterans relate to veterans.
Exactly.
They don't relate to non-veterans because you haven't had the experience. Well, I was just notified today by Assemblyman Cusick that in the upcoming state budget, there is $1 million for peer-to-peer veteran counseling.
Fantastic.
Now, the next part is, how do peer-to-peer type organizations get that appropriation towards them? But there's $1 million now earmarked for peer-to-peer counseling.
That is
And this
music.
was one of our very high priorities that we've been working to try to get for 2 years at least.
Thank you for your advocacy and leadership. That's music to my ears.
And one of the things that we wanted to try to work on here is to get some of that peer-to-peer counseling funds for the training for the mentors for the veterans courts here on Staten Island.
Absolutely.
So again, this is a local issue, but it's also a statewide issue. We need to be able to have veterans talking to other veterans.
Absolutely.
Because if you haven't been there, you don't know what it is.
Well, and see, the whole point of this Core 4 model,
Right.
the optimal entry point is at C2, peer-to-peer connection.
Yes.
And then once you've buddied up with a peer, then, that buddy might have had the experience of, like you, maybe thinking, I don't need anything, I'm good. But then that buddy can say, hey, but you know what? C3 is community holistic services. This sounds a little funny, but I went to this equine therapy, and you know what? I was able to sleep for the first time in months.
Yeah.
Or I went to, let's say, yoga or acupuncture, any number of these holistic modalities that can help our veterans and their family members feel normal again.
Yes.
So that's what this Core 4 model is designed to do. You're going to hear a lot more about it going forward, but let me just share with you, I guess I hope you can sense our excitement
Yep.
at just how much has changed over this last year and what your tax dollars and the ingenuity and innovation and hard work of so many advocates for so many years is bringing to fruition right here in New York City.
One of the things that I personally find frustrating, and I'm hoping that you can identify and help with it, is the ability to get the younger vet, the guy come home from Afghanistan, Iraq, getting them involved in what is out there for them,
Yes.
and helping them to understand that you may not have a problem, but damn, it won't hurt to find out
What's available.
what there is and what's available. You know.
That's exactly right.
And
there's such goodness to be found by joining generations of veterans. And so we know that here in New York City, we have a real opportunity to do that. I mean, giants like yourselves who have worked in this community for years, and now to be able to link up our post 9/11 veterans, many of them who have come back, if they originally were from New York, they've come back like Matt, or if they were a critter like me, for some reason, they found their way to New York. But that leads me actually to another one of our, actually it's not just another one of what we're doing, it's actually our overarching vision is, in addition to all of the things that we're doing in housing and whole health and education and employment, we want to make New York City a magnet city and attract new veterans here and their families, connecting with them while they're still at their post camps and stations.
Right. When I left the military, I was glad to get away from the military. And I didn't particularly go around and brag that I was in the military.
Vietnam era, you would not.
Vietnam era, yeah.
No,
and
you
none of
wouldn't.
that was
You
acceptable.
would
Wasn't received
And
well.
I'd hate like hell to see that happen again.
That's exactly the urgency and the impetus. And I will say, both of you having served during the Vietnam era, let me just say to all of our Vietnam veteran brothers and sisters and their loved ones, we as a country owe you and your families so much, because despite the fact that you didn't get the treatment that you had earned coming back from carrying out your nation's will, you have been the generation that has manned the airports and welcomed our veterans and joined them back with their families. You're the ones who have rallied the Rolling Thunder and Patriot Guard to guard the sanctimony of memorial services. You're the ones who have taken the lead in advocating for the new GI Bill and the right things that support veterans and their families. You're the ones who have set up programs like this to be able to spread the word and to share the wisdom. So I just want to say that to the Vietnam veterans of Staten Island, of New York City, and of America, we who have come behind you and who stand on your shoulders, we take your mantra to be our mantra, that together, never again will one generation of veterans turn its back on the next.
You know, I owe you an apology, and I owe the public an apology. I opened the show up and introduced you as commissioner, but the reality is I left out the important part. Commissioner is a retired general, 35 years military service, and I thank you for your service.
Well, Ed, thank you. And it was actually nearly 30 years. When I told you 35 years that I've been at this, it was
Right.
30 years in the Army in uniform, and the last 5 years in the community, 3 years of which have been right here in New York. And it doesn't get any better than this. Thank you so much. This, let me just say quickly, in fact, we had a chance to meet with one of the senior public affairs officials this afternoon from the Pentagon. And we talked a little bit about how we could work together and join with our service members in this campaign that I mentioned. I only thought I was blessed for nearly 30 years to wear the Army uniform proudly and to champion the needs and the strengths of our soldiers and their families. But to have this privilege here in New York now at a time when there's so much work to be done, and to be able to
Amen.
bring this to fruition in New York City, I just have to tell you that this is an unbidden blessing, and we're going to make the most of it every single day to make this count, because we know the rest of the nation is watching. They're looking at what's happening in New York City, and we got to make it count. So that's my pledge to you, Ed.
Thank you.
you so much, and thank you so much, Paul. Matt? Back at it.
Get to work,
Always.
Matt.
Yep,
Every day.
There you go, every single day.
Can I ask you what could be a loaded question, but I don't think so. What type of communication does your office have with the Veterans Administration and all of the problems ongoing in the Veterans Administration?
Well, first of all, we have very close relationships with the federal VA as well as our local partners here, you know, every borough, as you know. In fact, I was just talking with one of the veteran advocates here, President Mike from the Rolling Thunder, talking about the CBO, the community-based clinic just down the street. We consider the VA at all levels to be an essential partner. So we're engaged fully here in New York City. We make them better at what they do. They make us better, and together we are making New York City better. That network that I mentioned to you, Vet Connect NYC, the VA has been a member since the very beginning, to include the vet centers. Now, you know, I think I mentioned last time when I was here last year, I have a special place in my heart for vet centers. I think they're the most undervalued asset within the the VA system. But we're changing that here in New York. With the federal VA system, we worked very closely with Secretary Bob McDonald, who I think just led reforms and innovations that are just now starting to take root. And we're so thankful and grateful for his leadership. And I will tell you, no one was happier several months ago to hear that the new VA secretary, the president nominated Dr. Shulkin, who is himself a New Yorker. He comes up to New York to practice medicine about once a month. And he had been the top doc, the Undersecretary for Health, Undersecretary Bob. He's now the Secretary of the VA. That kind of continuity, that kind of wisdom, that kind of street smarts is exactly what the VA needs now and will rely on in partnership with cities, with nonprofits, in partnership with communities, and that's exactly what we're demonstrating here in New York City. So we're the biggest fans of the VA at all levels that you will ever find. And you have not heard of any stories here in New York City about VA issues.
Exactly.
We want to spread that throughout the country.
Well, we're just about running out of time, and I can't thank you enough for being here. Matt, I thank you for joining us, and we will be in touch with you. Okay.
My pleasure.
And
Terrific.
as always, Paul, thank you. Paul set this whole thing up with the commissioner and getting her to come back and.
It's still your show, Ed.
Well, it's a delight to be here because, you know, working hard is not enough, and all of us are working hard. But to be able to take a little time out and to come on a show like yours and to be able to get the show out there. I think you told me that this episode will run 40 times?
Oh, at least.
At least. This is work worth doing. Give us about 6 more months, and we'll come back and we'll bring a whole mix of our team, more like a softball team.
We'll
when we
hold
come
you
back.
to that. That's a promise.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ed.
Thank you for watching. In honor of, we appreciate you watching, and we'll keep bringing more programs to you.
Well done. Thank you, Ed.